The Kansas City Chiefs are back on the practice field in St. Joseph, Missouri for the penultimate day of training camp. Tomorrow will be their next to last day, and then they will have their last practice in St. Joe before we get the 2025 NFL season, for which we are all very excited. But we do have some notes to talk about from today's practice, including some notes on the offensive line and a quote from Andy Reid about the very controversy that we are all hoping gets resolved before the NFL season, as well as the most confounding sort of defensive news that I think, was disappointing. I think maybe. We don't know exactly what's going on with it, but also there is a new player for which there will be a video later tonight. Remember, the Chiefs did lose Deon Bush for the season with an Achilles injury in that game against the Cardinals. So they did replace him on the roster, and we will talk about that. Now, first off, good news. Rashee Rice is back at practice today. Then we have a stretch lines picture here. If you look real close, you can see his ankle monitor. It's not funny. I shouldn't laugh at that. Don't make those jokes. I will not make those jokes in the future. I resolve to be better. We get the injury report here from Matt Derrick. Cornerback Kristian Fulton is getting his first reps in team period on scout team this morning. We will talk a little bit more about him and that situation in a moment. The Chiefs have signed defensive lineman Nate Matlack. Matlock? He's wearing number 57, safety Deon Bush Achilles, and defensive end Janerius Robinson out today. We'll talk about Janerius Robinson at the end of the video. A real bummer for a guy that started to stand out against other competition, even if it was the lower ends of that competition. And not sure exactly the length of his injury. Maybe it's not too serious, but it's one of those injuries that could be serious. And when you're a 265-pound guy, it can be serious. Chiefs rookie wide receiver Jaylen Royals with 2 drops at practice today. I don't think that's anything to worry about. We have not heard about Jaylen Royals having drops to this point in camp. Remember last year in camp, was that mini camp, we started to see Xavier Worthy that looked like he was going to be a drop master all of a sudden in the Chiefs offense, but by the time the season came around, that was no longer the case. I imagine that he was told to work on something. So I think what happens sometimes is when he's played his whole life a certain way. Certainly he had some coaching in college, right? But he's getting feedback from a game performance against NFL talent, and probably maybe it's something in his release, something like that he's focusing on. So prior to the season, that is going to be a point of fixation, and in the practices, that will remain a point of fixation, and hopefully that becomes second nature in games, right? So he will probably not develop a drop problem. There's no real reason to be concerned here. Also, for rookies, I think this is where the real NFL moments happen. Before this is practice, right? So training camp practices, they've practiced their whole life. It's certainly probably more intense at the NFL level than it was at Utah State, but he's still in practice. This is where the grind of the NFL season starts. You have real games, you have real feedback from those games, and you have a weekly install. So in addition to practice, which is physically demanding, you have things that are pointed out that you have to work on. Then you have weekly install, which are things that you have to know this week on the field where you will be performing in front of millions of individuals. So you can't let your team down. And then you're going against bigger, stronger, faster opponents, etc. That's probably just the tip of the iceberg for what an NFL season means, for what an NFL season means, and they are things are going to be coming fast and furious at Jaylen Royals. You hear this all the time with rookies, and there's a real improvement in the second year, etc. So I don't think that's anything to worry about. Andy Reid said Hollywood Brown's injury is more in the ankle-foot area than any high ankle scare. Reid added that Brown is making progress. He's back to running. This comes from Pete. And just a reminder, one time 2020, because 2021 is where 17-game season started, right? 2020, he played a full NFL slate of games. At no other time in Hollywood Brown's career has he played a full slate of NFL games, including last year where he played just 2 games for the Kansas City Chiefs, making 1 reception for 15 yards, or 15, no, I'm an idiot, 9 receptions for 91 yards. He was starting to look good as the season ended, right? So you have whatever that means for Hollywood Brown and this ankle situation. The rough part for the Kansas City Chiefs is the early season is probably when the NFL suspension is going to come down for Rashee Rice. So that is when they will need him most in this season. Not to mention it is a meat grinder of a schedule, especially up front for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I've said it before and I'll continue to say it. And hopefully I don't have to temper this during the season. Those first few games are going to be very telling for what this offense can be, not as a ceiling, but as a floor. You will be without Rashee Rice. You will be facing some of the better defenses that you're going to face. You will have the odd scheduling quirk of being out of country. And if they can get through that first gauntlet with a very good record, it will portend very good things for the Kansas City Chiefs. It would be very more demanding to have to do that without Hollywood Brown for some stretch of that time. So keeping him off the practice field for now, hopefully, pays dividends in the first few weeks of the season. On the 4th snap of early offensive run-throughs, Mike Caliendo subbed in for Kingsley Suamataia at left guard, and Jaylen Moore subbed in for Jawaan Taylor at right tackle. Yes, the Chiefs rotate a lot, but don't remember Caliendo getting in that quickly at left guard this camp. I think he's absolutely right. I don't think 4 snaps is when Mike Caliendo and Kingsley Suamataia usually sub, but also that's not when Jawaan Taylor and Jaylen Moore, to the best of my recollection, normally sub since Jawaan Taylor came back. So maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it's just a sign that these really are positional battles that you're going to see maybe during the season. Starters change on the offensive line. And I'll get to some thoughts on that. But in later offensive team drill, Moore came in for Taylor at right tackle on the 6th play of the drive, and Caliendo came in for Suamataia at left guard on the 8th play. So, again, sort of the same note. And then Andy Reid on Kingsley Suamataia's preseason opener, I thought he did a good job. Both he and Simmons, I thought, worked well together. They didn't have a ton of snaps, but what they had, I thought they did well with. Reid also said Mike Caliendo played well in the game, too. He went on to say that that's what they expect of Mike Caliendo. They view him as a starter, which is problematic for Kingsley, for what that's worth. I am, at this point, fully converted to the mindset of whoever gives them the best chance to win, put him on the field, because, again, those first few weeks are going to be very, very difficult for the offense. They will be shorthanded. They are likely to be down 2 wide receivers again very early in the season. So maybe Hollywood Brown is full go by the time the season starts. I don't know. Caliendo, for what this means, though, Caliendo is on the upper end of the age scale and the lower end of the athletic ability in that offensive line room. And that is not opinion. That's not opinion. May the best man win, right? But when you're talking about the ceiling and floor of the offense overall, Caliendo over Kingsley, as far as potential is concerned, not performance, but potential, that is a governor on the offense. It might be that performance, Kingsley is a governor, and Mike Caliendo opens things up. He is more predictable, for sure, than Kingsley at this point. I think we are seeing the ramifications a little bit of that play that we talked about in the wake of the first preseason game, where Kingsley Suamataia was blown up. And again, that happens. It's not going to happen as often to Trey Smith as it does perhaps to Kingsley, but that happens. Kingsley has all the tools not to get blown up, but players get blown up every NFL Sunday in the NFL. And he did not, at that point, do what was necessary. He did not die slow. He just kind of got out of the way, which is not ideal when you're protecting Patrick Mahomes. As far as Taylor versus Moore, I would like to run the Moore experiment. I know Taylor has had the knee issues last year, which inhibited him. So maybe he wasn't really as bad as we were looking at. He was struggling through that knee issue. But the flags were not a last year thing. Perhaps they were exacerbated by that injury. You have to get off faster if you know you are limping to some extent. But the more I watch Moore, the more I like his game. I think he has a genuine physicality that Taylor does not. So he, I think, would be better for the run. I think there's a potential that he could be better even in the passing game. I like Moore. I liked that signing initially. I couched the signing with the fact that, this is a Brett Veach move. What he does is he's going to bring in a veteran that can get the job done, and then he's going to draft someone. At that point, we had no idea it would be that they were drafting Josh Simmons late in the first round. We had certainly no idea that they would get Josh Simmons and what looks to be a starting linebacker, Jeffrey Bassa, for the very same pick. So, is what it is. We will see how that goes moving forward. On to the defensive backs here. Light practice, but Christian Fulton is working second team with Joshua Williams. With Jalen Watson out, Trent McDuffie working with Najee Johnson with top team. Shamari Connor is at safety to start this look. So you're looking at Trent McDuffie, Najee Johnson, and Shamari Connor at safety. I think Shamari Connor is not as talented as Jaden Hicks. We don't know that it was Jaden Hicks who was not out there at safety. Perhaps it was Brian Cook, or I don't know that, right? I wasn't there. So perhaps it was Jaden Hicks and Shamari Connor. I would doubt very heavily that was the case. I imagine that Brian Cook is that other safety. Why that is, I can't tell you. Like I said, after the game in one of the previous day's videos, I think that Jaden Hicks struggled in tackling and pursuit angles in that game. There was the very clear running back screen that kind of he froze up on. You don't like to see that. Brian Cook, to the best of my recollections, has never frozen up in that way. So Shamari Connor, I don't think is as talented as Jaden Hicks. We will have to see how this develops. Then we get this. So this is a interception here for Christian Fulton. In the end zone, by the way, Christian Ainsworth says Christian Fulton still got it, reads it all the way for the easy sit and pick interception. Great to see him back making plays. I would like to point out Christian Fulton is behind everyone in the end zone. That's not a great place for a defensive back to be, but it did work out for him. If you watch the play, what happens is his man passes and he just sits and waits on the play to develop, which is here Xavier Worthy crossing the back of the end zone. It was not a great throw. So it was not a great throw. Then we have, my mouse isn't working. Edde Resurrection chiming in. This is exactly why the Chiefs signed Christian Fulton. Big-brained and in the right place at the right time. Praying he stays healthy. Me too, because we're going to get into a little bit about him. So just as a recap, because we haven't really seen Christian Fulton since he was signed, he is a 5'11" and a half cornerback. He is 197 pounds. This was as he was coming out. I think he's slightly over 200 now. Still the same height. So I've been hoping to get a little bit taller my entire adult life too. 4.46 40-yard dash. That's a good score. 1.56 10-yard split. Good score. You have a 35.5-inch vert, 10-foot 3-inch broad jump. Good scores. Short shuttle, not so great. 3-cone drill of 6.94. Good score. That is the athlete that Christian Fulton is. Then you have his statistics here, worth looking at here. Never played a full slate of NFL games in his career. It has been the Chiefs' experience over the past couple of years that someone comes to Kansas City and will not play a full season if you're talking about free agent signings. So we have to take this for what it is worth. Started 14 games last year, 11 the 2 previous seasons, 13 games in 2021, started just 2 games in 2020. Is a competent tackler. You see him there with 51 tackles last year, in the 40s the 3 previous seasons. Doesn't add a whole lot has not to this point added a whole lot as far as pass rush is concerned. If you're going to do that anywhere, it's going to be in the Steve Spagnuolo defense. Just 1 career sack, but I don't know how much he was counted on to rush the passer in Tennessee or Los Angeles. You have a guy that does get the occasional interception, but has never been a ball hawk at cornerback. I would love to see a study on interceptions in the NFL. It seems that is the trend everywhere. Is good deflecting passes. You see here, 7 pass deflections last year, 14 pass deflections in 2021. Then we have his grades here. So this is very promising for the Chiefs. 71.1 overall grade, a 79.3 run defense grade. This is a guy who can read the run. This is a guy who will step up and make the stop. This is a guy who is competent on the edge. That is important for this team. We have seen in the past that sometimes that is a backbreaker for the defense. But the real standout here, 67.9 coverage grade. That is what the Chiefs wanted at that second cornerback spot. Not playing as the second cornerback now, but there's time before the season starts. And his snap counts here, you can count on him for about 650 snaps to 750 snaps per season. That is on the lower end of what the Chiefs would need. So a lot of the Chiefs backs defensive backs play 800, 900 snaps. You had Trent McDuffie, I think, had 999 last year, something like that, right by 1,000 snaps. So missing time does accumulate, and it accumulates fast, normally to the clip of about 50 to 65 snaps per game that you are missing sitting out. And then we have the devastating news for Janerius Robinson, potentially devastating. Chiefs coach Andy Reid says defensive end Janerius Robinson had a foot fracture. This happened very late in the game, and he left the field on his own power, I believe, right? I think we didn't really have an idea about this injury because there was nothing made of it on the broadcast, if I'm remembering correctly. But left the field, and I think that it was going to be a tough row to hoe if he was going to make this team anyway, Janerius Robinson. But we saw when he was signed originally, very, very gifted athlete, very big guy at the defensive end position, and I thought had some potential to make this roster, some potential to get some real reps for the defense. Hasn't come up that way so far. But we have here from the defense starting to shape up a defense with some holes in the passing game, but that's the NFL in today's game, right? Nobody has an absolute shutdown pass defense, and we've seen this time and again with Spagnuolo as the defensive coordinator. Those things change as the season progresses. As players get settled into their positions, as players start to learn more and more what they can and can't do in the parameters of the defense improves, the defense gels together. You add to that they're going to have some rookie pass rushers in Omar Norman-Lott and Ashton Gillotte that will probably get better as the season goes. You're adding that to a defensive line that last year lacked. They finished in the middle of the range as far as sacks were concerned. They are hoping to get back to that upper echelon of the NFL because that's where magic happens for a defense when you can throw the passer off. Ashton Gillotte in the first preseason game, I thought showed you exactly who you thought Ashton Gillotte was going to be. Not a lot of conversions, but a lot of getting off the ball, getting upfield, and a little bit of push from Omar Norman-Lott as well. Was not as impressive, in my opinion, as was Ashton Gillotte in that first preseason game. I think that the defense will be better than it was last year. You will have Christian Fulton at least some of the season, and that alone will do wonders for the defense above where they were last season in the absence of Jaylen Watson. Jaylen Watson is going to be an interesting situation for this defense this coming offseason. Do you prioritize Jaylen Watson, especially knowing that he has had a fairly extensive injury history? It might be that we see Jaylen Watson walk in hopes that they get some type of compensation as far as draft picks are concerned, compensatory picks, right? Remember, Jaylen Watson was a 7th round pick. So if you are cashing in Jaylen Watson at the end of his rookie contract for something above a 7th round pick, it's kind of you can think of it as a trade win. Obviously on the field, it's a little bit different because Jaylen Watson has been the second most dependable cornerback for this team the last couple of years, but Brett Veach is able to identify defensive back talent, so you would hope that you can replace him in some way, shape, form, fashion, facet, or manner. Again, that is all I have for today, but that is all I have for this video. I will be back later today with a video on the new defensive end that was signed, and as always, I hope to have you back for that video.